Are you ready to feel violently patriotic? What about pro-human? Or are you just a nerd who sits in the corner saying, well, actually, humans are the viruses? Get that non-humanity supporting crap out of here, because today we're doing it live. As humanity with the best intentions, but everybody knows what is said about those, beams a signal deep into space to the Goldilocks planets in an effort to communicate with any would-be species out there. For a time, we received no answer. However, eventually, as the project continues, one planet would respond. By sending forward a small team to determine what sort of world our planet is, these consequences, if successful, would be catastrophic for humanity. Forced to engage with the technologically superior aliens, the Goobermans would start sweating it out like a senator on a trial. Engaging in military efforts against the invaders, first, their goals seem a little strange. Second, their biology, that's even more strange. But ultimately, what were they trying to accomplish, and how did they evolve to be the way that they are? Let's discuss their motives as well as their xenobiology in today's episode over the movie Battleship. We kick off our story with like 12 years of production company logos playing, all gunning for this video's monetization. As I uploaded it, I'm pretty sure I heard YouTube say good luck, Cairo. In 2005, a distant planet identical to Earth was discovered. Now, assumedly, because the reality is we have like spectrometry to kind of determine atmospheric composition, which is not a perfect science when trying to figure out what's on the planet. Anyhow, because this was in like sort of a range, NASA began to try to contact them, which is a horrible idea. Honestly, we should be trying to figure out how to recall the Voyagers potentially, because if it runs into something that we don't want them to know that we're down here, it could be bad. The beacon built by the scientists exists to identify Goldilocks planets, of which Earth is actually only marginally in. Let's discuss that for a second. Funnily enough, Earth is on the warmer side of the Goldilocks zone where liquid water can exist on the planet. As the sun continues to age though, eventually Earth will leave this zone and it'll be pushed further outwards towards Mars. Not the planet, but the Goldilocks zone. But what's more interesting is the moon Titan that orbits Jupiter is actually supposedly similar to a primordial Earth, or so we think. It may be in the Goldilocks zone eventually as the sun pushes us out further, which will encompass the moon, which may actually make it habitable for a time because the sun is expanding. By this point, Earth will have been sterilized due to the heat, and even Mars may be facing some consequences, turning back into a desert planet if we ever end up terraforming it. So the plan is to find these planets, transmit a signal to the target planet, and then hope that whatever is out there isn't aggressive and on the lookout for other habitable planets as well. And if humanity is anything to go off of, then other species may be exactly like us. One scientist talks about how this is going to be like Columbus and the Native Americans. And yeah, we really do not need to be making our whereabouts known while we are a single planet species. The only saving grace is that space is so vast it would take a ridiculous amount of time for the signal to reach anything, depending on where they are. I mean, even with Proxima Centauri, it would take 4 years for the signal to reach, and anything moving slower than the speed of light would take a considerable more amount of time to reach Earth. But over at a bar, two bros, Alex and Stone, are just drinking for the younger brother's birthday. He gets a quote about overcoming adversity, and the younger brother is apparently down on his luck currently and needs a job. His brother suggests, hey, why don't you join the Navy like I did? Or construction. Having worked construction, go military. Of course, I'm sure anybody who's been in the military is gonna say go construction. So he hits up the blonde at the bar to make a pass at her, and she's already disgusted, so that's off to a great start. Also, meeting your potential wife at a bar is definitely a recipe for success. So he stares at her like a serial killer for a second, and then she says, my name is Hungry. He then says, give me 5 minutes and I'll be back with a chicken burrito. Running over to a store, they close the mini mart at like 7:34 p.m. and let me tell you, bro is down bad. Breaking into the mini mart, the fall looks like it probably hurts, and he gets a burrito and then breaks back out of the store as well, as then sirens begin wailing. Heading outside, he got her the burrito but then gets tased while running away. This man's level of thirst is unmatched, and he's resisting a taser because of it. Holy Lord, the sheer focus. But a second one then seals the deal. Of course, you look less cool as you pee your pants in front of the blonde chick. The next day, the older brother yells at him as the blonde chick's dad is the admiral. I mean, how could he have known any of that? So his older brother says, you're gonna join the Navy and then turn your life around and stop being such a waste. And I mean, hey, the military can in fact straighten you out at least to a degree, so not really a bad thing. A bunch of ships are now heading down to Hawaii, where the US and Japan are engaged in a much friendlier competition this time around, some soccer. Bruh, is that Rihanna? Also, why not play the real football? American football, that is. Not the one where you accidentally touch somebody's elbow to say hello and they fall down crying, pretending like they're hurt. Like, I get it. Boo-hooing is part of the sport. I just don't think you really need to have a theater degree to play soccer. Anyways, also Blonde Chick is here making out with Alex, so I guess he did seal the deal on that one. So Alex starts getting major smack talk to him by Nagata, as then he gets kicked in the face by him. See? Friendly competition. taking the penalty kick, he then misses because he's completely concussed, like an Ultra Giga Chad, as is by design. Lull the Japanese into a false sense of security. It's a classic move.
For legal reasons, that's a joke. For legal reasons, that's a joke.
So they walk off with Stone comforting Alex for being a complete idiot who's probably concussed. And then later on, Alex is hanging out with the blonde chick as they are evidently dating. But while that's going on, the signal is shot back out again at the planet. And during this, something is heading towards Earth. They say it's sent every 24 hours, and maybe they're just showing up to tell us to stop contacting them about their planet's extended warranty. Arriving late with the Admiral's daughter, they run up, like making a big deal about how late they are, but then Alex just stops to tell a youngling the difference between a destroyer and a battleship. Anyways, running up to the mission accomplished meeting, Alex then moves into line to pretend like he's been there the whole time. Stone gives his speech as some jets fly overhead, and the patriotism begins reaching unprecedented levels. Nagata, who just got done kicking Alex in the face, then starts wrecking his planned event to ask her dad if he can marry his daughter. Alex then bails out, like a man of course, and goes to the bathroom. I don't know, man, it's really just a formality, like, don't overthink it, it's not really that hard. But while he's in there, Nagata comes into the bathroom, so finally, the long-awaited fight commences. As they are brought before the Admiral for fighting, Alex reports that the floor was wet. Nagata just helped grab Alex from falling, as Nagata says, well, while I was grabbing him, I slipped and then ran into the wall a few times as a result, to explain his black eye. So Taken then scolds him as he sends everyone else out except for Alex. So after a nice breakdown sesh of his character, Alex forgoes telling him about trying to marry his daughter because maybe this isn't the time and the place. The next day, as drill commences, essentially they're out there to conduct exercises with the Japanese to engage other enemies. And you know, with World War III on the horizon, I'm sure a lot of these are being conducted IRL right now. Alex then gives a nice speech in complete contrast to his brother, Stone of course being the Paragon Shepherd and Alex being the Renegade Shepherd. Like, bro, you can't choose the Renegade option every single time and then punch the reporter. Although, honestly, that's the one you should choose. So a helicopter arrives to grab Alex from his ship, and then heading back to Stone's quarters, Alex is then told he's probably getting kicked out of the Navy. He then talks about his potential, like, look, potential is great, but if someone doesn't want to use it, save your energy and just let them crash and burn, to be honest. Like, also, how did Alex go from just like a random dude at 26 to a lieutenant at 26 less than a year later? I mean, I suppose he could have gone through like, you know, officer training that quick, but I'm not like overly familiar with the process, so maybe that's normal, but it just seems like it happened really fast. So over at the Naval Physical Therapy area, people are getting used to their new rigs to walk. Sam meets her new patient Mick, who's upset about his legs. I mean, I can't really blame him, who wouldn't be? Sam and Mick then go for a walk as he talks about his dead dog. Alex calls Sam to basically tell her, yeah, I messed up. And she's like, well, you need to stop messing up. And he's like, copy that. Bro, why? Like, ew, don't say that. Anyways, I can only thank God all of the military in my family does not do this nonsense. Anyhow, the ship from earlier is now moving past Saturn. So back at the nerds area, they are tracking 5 incoming objects as an alarm goes off. As a man works on the transformers out at the beacon, his friend comes to talk to him. Dr. Negrady, what a name, called to talk to Cal. Checking the screens, he also reports there are 5 distinct objects and are locked in on the signal that he's currently emitting. NASA is on the call as well as the military, as then the aliens start hitting space junk. Hilariously, that's what's gonna protect Earth. Are you telling me these aliens can go all the way across the galaxy but can't check for space junk or have like a kinetic barrier in place to prevent a collision? Kinda seems like a skill issue. So as the objects enter the atmosphere, they then crash into the ocean, and the one that split up crashes into China, which is not ideal. Over at the Pentagon, apparently Scotland, France, and Iowa, especially Iowa, have been affected by the splitting of the ship. Not Iowa, what of our corn? So they assume that this is just an alien response at this point as the ships power back up. I'm also like 100% sure jets would be heading out there to figure out what this thing is, like as soon as they discovered it was entering the atmosphere. But instead, they send the ships to go check it out. You know, the things that go like 34 knots per hour or roughly 39 miles per hour, or in heathen units, 63 kilometers per hour. Likely the scientists give a close-up interview about this isn't from our planet, and the Chinese say, well, this is some sort of communication equipment from what we can gather on the fly. So back on the ships, while Jimbo is scanning the horizon, Stone is seeing it as well that something has set up residence within the water. Checking the radar, they realize there's a radar blackout on this thing, so they can't really see it with instrumentations, but they can see it with their special eyes. Calling out to it, predictably nothing answers. Sitting over a small craft with a minigun, this will make dudes say hell yeah. Approaching the monolith, they have no idea what this thing is, and you would think someone would call out to them on the radio to let them know that something had crashed into Earth, or they should call out to somebody, or there should be a line of communication. Considering they also sent the boats out there, but as the small craft calls out to tell the ship to prepare to be boarded, like again, this is an alien craft, and I'm sure the government would be quite interested in knowing which just landed off the coast of Hawaii. So jumping onto that thing, bad idea. It's got strange symbols all over it, and in general, it seems like these things just emerged given the water cascading off of them, which means it's probably not an asteroid or a meteorite, and it's called a meteorite because it has the right stuff to make the ground. As Alex crosses the underwater section, he touches one of the symbols and immediately gets electrocuted. But he should be good to go as he's developed a resistance to tasers from earlier. A beam then heads upwards into the atmosphere, creating a force field blocking off all ships. One of the jets sent to figure out what this thing is, then runs into that bad boy, and it's like a real force field, not just a little crappy EMP one. On the other side of that thing are the 3 ships. It then lets out an EMP blast as well, disabling the ships inside as another ship emerges from the water. Then another one comes up. It's a good old-fashioned 6 boats enter, 3 boats leave. You know, that's totally said all the time. Seeing that these things are in fact ships, they let out a blast from the horn, which predictably the aliens don't really respond to. Instead, they appear to be powering up something. Yeah, that's not gonna end well. So a shockwave is then let out, it breaks pretty much everything and gives everyone tinnitus. Welcome to the party, there's no way that's service related, good luck with the VA. Super fun stuff. However, if you notice, this was clearly the non-lethal option. They decide to fire a warning shot. I don't know, maybe just fire a shot into that thing. That would be my recommendation as a completely inexperienced sailor or leader. Like, kick off this interplanetary war the right way like we almost did with the Turians. Then again, I'm just some random YouTuber. Maybe I shouldn't be tasked with interspecies diplomacy. So firing that shot, they miss. Nice. As the aliens realize we have the ability to attack, it goes to square up, luckily jumping over Alex and his crew for some reason because he's the main character. The aliens then fire off one of the rounds, which impacts immediately, damaging the ship. Alex and the rest of the group finally start making their way out as they fire on that thing with the minigun, which I don't know what they thought was gonna happen. Obviously, absolutely no effect. That looks like some thick metal. So now it becomes a massive game of trying to outrun the aliens' arc shots, which interestingly, the straight line is the most effective, so why arc it? Like, I like how we tend to think aliens won't just straight Gauss cannon our ass, like, I don't know. But that said, I mean, it's effective as Stone's ship gets completely decimated by the explosions. Well, I do believe your brother is probably gone there, Prometheus. So instead of heading to his brother's boat, they now head over to the John Paul Jones boat. But now this puts Alex in charge, which is not great, but classic. Well, time to tap into that alleged potential everyone is so sure that you have. Looking out, Alex says he's going to full-on attack. Heading towards the alien ship, the thing then turns to square up. Nagata's ship, realizing that this is a problem, fires a shot to back him up, but they immediately get hit as well. As it turns back on Alex's ship, he just is basically on a collision course. Alex says, I'm gonna ram it. Highly intelligent move, cannot possibly go wrong. What a freaking caveman. Alex is then told, hey man, there's sailors in the water, we need to go pick them up. So that thing is like locked and loading Brides of Christ, as in they turn to go pick up the sailors instead. So the ship's like, okay, never mind, it starts chilling out. So these things don't really seem that aggressive. It could have easily just blown them up. So here's what I'm not understanding about this species. They show up with clearly their own motives. There's an aggressor inside of the bubble with them, and they obviously have the ability to take them out. Why not do it? Deductive reasoning indicates that while they will defend, their main objective is not to go on the offensive. However, clearing the immediate area would be ideal for their own survival. It sort of seems like to me this may be because they intend to establish communication with humanity, but need to set up a safe area for themselves, which, I mean, that's kind of a human classic as well. What's the first thing we do when we reach a new area? We set up walls and fortresses. Of course, then it completely turns after that, usually into something bad, but I'm just not getting the whole alien conqueror vibe from these guys, because furthermore, why show up with such a small group? I mean, sure, maybe they couldn't have committed the resources necessary for a full-scale invasion of the planet that may or may not be worth it, but seriously, nothing here is indicating that their motives are absolutely hellbent towards rendering the native population extinct. So the aliens then fire something up into the sky that goes to their ship. Again, I don't know, man. It just seems like they could have easily been more aggressive here. Of course, then again, those things go and target the base that they're just kind of hanging out completely, then disabling all the helicopters. I mean, that is aggressive, but what would you do if you were trying to establish contact? Disable the local area? Talk after that? Anyhow, one of the metal meatballs of malicious intent starts shrekking everything as it runs across a youngling, stopping as the friend or foe system doesn't label him as a foe. And that's another thing, humanity on the visors of the aliens aren't labeled as foes, they're labeled as friends. Like, don't get me wrong, burn their mongrel hides for choosing this method, but upon doing so, maybe figure out what their motive for being here in the first place is. So as the meatballs then move on from the helicopters before moving on to wreck the infrastructure and potentially disable any movement, this would probably present as kind of an issue. So back at the Pentagon, they are told that they are trapped outside of the area that the aliens have set up and they can't talk to anyone on the other side of the force field, but there are 3 ships that are unaccounted for, so they're probably in there. Meanwhile, on the other side of the force field, picking up sailors from the Japanese ship, Nagata then yells at Alex, potentially rightfully so. Also, how much water can possibly be on these alien ships for them to constantly be leaking like this? Alex then decides at this point to turn tail and head towards the force field. Meanwhile, Sam and Mick are still doing their hike as they get buzzed by something, but it didn't look like a human craft. It's heading towards the beacon program. As it approaches, everything starts shaking. Touching down, the aliens get out. Ah yes, bipedal. It's a natural classic for high levels of intelligence. Which you may be asking, why exactly is that? Oh, you're not? Doesn't matter, because we get to talk about spines. Concerning the biomechanics of the body, it's all about support. Gravity, whether higher or lower, is going to put strain on a body. For humanity, skeletons help us resist the effects of gravity, at least for a time, which allows our muscles, tendons, and ligaments attachment points in which to move. However, there's a trade-off. Depending on the attachment point, this can have vastly different consequences for other systems. For instance, take a giraffe. Due to its head being so far away from its torso where its heart is, the length of the skeleton actually causes the heart to beat extremely hard to move blood up to the brain. However, because of gravity's pull, this allows for the blood to be slow, causing the brain to not rupture due to this pressure, but there's also a specialized organ in there. But when the head is lowered, in theory, the heart would actually blow out all of the brain's blood vessels. To counter this, there's a spongy-like material at the base of the brain that allows for blood to be slowed and become less pressurized, preventing the giraffe from just being ended by it lowering its head to get some water. It's very interesting. In other ways, the skeleton connection to the skull affects intellect. This more pertains to the aliens and to humans, but at some point in human history, according to the theory of evolution, we stood upright. We see actually other similar behavior in primates, but as we did this, eventually the spine would move under the skull from its original position, located more towards the back of the skull, like many other quadrupedal animals. Other adaptations would happen, such as like femurs turning more inwards to allow us to walk, but this spinal connection point was absolutely critical to what we are now. Due to this, the bone would support the skull rather than the muscles and tendons. As a result, connection points to the skull itself didn't have to be as robust, which allowed for those deep concave connections, which like a ton of tendons and muscle was connected to be allowed to move outwards because it was no longer necessary. This allowed for the brain to grow, which while making the head heavier, didn't really matter because the spine could easily support the extra weight. In fact, if you look at the difference between a chimp skull and a human skull, it's highly apparent that the brain size is largely different due to the skull being freed up from the attachment points taking priority. Anyhow, as humans continued to stand, we became fully bipedal, and as protein, like we consumed during our hairier days, we became more intelligent and then our skulls moved outwards. As this principle can be applied to other species, it's likely this race of regents, as they are known, followed a similar pathway but on a different timeline. We haven't seen what exactly they look like yet, but we'll kind of get there momentarily. So at this point, some Jeep Wranglers show up to tiredly tell Sam and Mick that aliens have shown up and you just guys gotta leave. I mean, they're not a Forerunner, but I guess if you get like Jeeps brand new and then just accept the oil leaks that come from factory and the fact that they're only gonna last like 108 miles, I guess you could keep them. But Mick then elects to continue walking, however, because he's like, when have you ever seen aliens, despite they just got buzzed by one of them? But the cops then get attacked by the aliens, and really the aliens were just trying to tell them like the Toyota supremacy, and they knew that they needed to be saved for the Jeeps. We should be thanking them. But back over at the Thunderdome, Alex had a breakdown about his brother as he's told, hey man, you're kind of needed. You're sort of our commanding officer. Walking into the cargo hold, they actually somehow got a hold of one of these things. It's actually kind of confusing. They said when the transport crashed, they found it floating here. So I guess basically these suits can survive re-entry into the atmosphere. But taking a look at his hands, he's got weird hands for sure. So step one, get the armor off, or at least try. Going for the head, they then take off his helmet, exposing themselves to whatever microorganisms this thing has. Like, yeah, step one actually should probably be put on a BSL-4 suit. Anyways, opening his eye, he appears unconscious as breaking dishes, then starts saying something. This joke is about to be really stupid, but it wakes up and then grabs Alex's head, sharing its brain memories with them. As I generally like to say, this is likely because their mirror neurons are a lot more powerful than our mirror neurons. And if you're asking what mirror neurons are, essentially these kind of exist in the past to if we were like scanning, say the horizon grassland somewhere, and our brain identified a pattern that something was looking at us like a predator, so to speak, or like a lion or tiger or really anything, or even a bear. Except there weren't really bears out there. This would allow parts of your brain to work to then kind of alert the rest of your brain, hey, there might be something out there, and that's why you get the feeling something's looking at you. It's because you've already seen it, but only part of your brain really recognizes the pattern. But interestingly enough, mirror neurons seem to activate in things that are associated with what is believed to be psychic abilities, such as in Ghostbusters when they were looking at the cards and he's like, oh, I want you to guess what card this is. There's actually activation within the mirror neurons. And there's also activation within the mirror neurons when people are put next to random number generators and then told to think about a number and then that number appears more often. Anyways, it could potentially be that brains can evolve into psychic abilities. That's getting way out there, I know. It's not established biology, but the point is how it could potentially work is your brain creates an electromagnetic field. These mirror neurons may be more sensitive to it. So if another electromagnetic field, essentially from these aliens, somehow is able to alter the one in your head, potentially it could be a transference of memory. But anyways, as the alien shares these memories, it then shows that there was some sort of war on their planet, and then the ship gets attacked as his buddies break in. So, a simple rescue mission it seems, and then nobody gets taken out. Again, it doesn't seem like an aggressive species, but since we have seen them, let's talk about this specific alien race. This species stands similar to the height of a man, but potentially a little taller. So I would put them at a height at around 5'10" to roughly 6'4", depending on what sort of role they specialize in. That comes out to around 177.8 to 193 centimeters in heathen units. Being bipedal, you know where we need to start. Starting with the feet of the regent species, they actually possess 4 toes, but they appear to walk on the balls of their feet, designating them as digitigrade. In fact, if they walked on their feet in a plantigrade structuring, like Chad's, it's likely that humans may be taller somewhat, or at least the same height. Moving up the legs, some of the species appears much larger, while others a little more lithe, so the amount of muscle on their frame varies from individual to individual, which isn't much different from humans, depending on alterations. Like, some of you probably watching this, I mean, there's what, 1,030,000 or 32,000, so I'm sure some of you take roids, and if you do, you probably have more muscle, whereas I'm sure one person here probably, works at NASA, so you're probably a little skinnier. It's just how it goes sometimes. So it's highly likely this species has enhancements of their own to their own biology, resulting in stronger forms, and these ones are known as thugs. Their knees are much like ours, and their quadriceps connect at the standard point that it does with, humans in our pelvis. Given that their body structure is similar to man's, we can assume that the gravity on their world would be roughly like Earth's. I would say maybe just a little stronger based on their atmosphere, but we'll get there in a second. And the structure that we have is great concerning femur to pelvis connection, but if the gravity was much stronger, this joint would wear out rather quickly, and bipedalism in general would not be the favored structure, which is where I kind of get this idea that it cannot be that much higher gravity. Moving up the abdomen, typically like man, the abdominal region is much like ours in that it's almost a straight line from what might be considered the males of their species. In fact, that is if they do have males. Not much is known about their species and how they breed, or even if sexual dimorphism is a concept on their world. They would have a thoracic region like Homo sapiens as well, potentially housing lungs similar to man, considering there is no presentation of gills to facilitate oxygen diffusion that is visible. My reasoning for this is their helmets are said to contain a mixture of gas with higher oxygen saturation. Now, this is interesting as it shows either their atmosphere on their world is just thicker than that on Earth, which, could just be there's more available gas, or possibly that their gravity is slightly higher. And this makes more sense considering they are a fairly muscular species and are quite strong on Earth, even apart from having their suits, meaning that they may have evolved on a somewhat higher gravity planet, but not enough to make bipedalism an absolute detriment to class into. So the arms of the regent species are rather large, but as you move down to their arms, they have really weird hands. They have 2 grasping fingers on each side, and because of this, on their world, they may have at one point climbed the native vegetation, sort of like how primates do on Earth, as these would be great for grasping branches, looking extremely similar to the apes of this planet's hands. Getting to the head of this creature, we actually see the body plan. Again, it's extremely similar to humanity. They possess a mouth similar in proportions to man, with teeth that do suggest that they may be omnivores. Bristles on their chin that do not appear like hair, but actually appear to be more like quills, which we'll kind of round back to here in a second. The nose sits a little higher up on the face than man's, but they possess binocular vision, potentially indicating that they were hunters on their world as well. I say potentially, as it's important to remember binocular forward-facing eyes. It's not really the typical end-all be-all example of a predator, like look at gorillas, but it's a hard and fast rule that can typically apply. So moving back to the quills for a moment, this indicates that it may be possible this species' own evolving life may have followed kind of a similar pathway to how it started on Earth, like life began in the oceans, formed fish, moved up onto land as amphibians, well, originally lungfish, and then turned into amphibians, where they had to still be very, very close to water, which then became reptiles, which could move further inland, and then birds, which are all over, and eventually mammals arose. Of course, a cataclysmic event would happen on our planet, which then paved the way for man, but everyone already knows what that is. So after the rescue mission, which left all of them alive, right? Alex says, I got a bad feeling, like we're gonna need a new planet bad feeling. Where exactly are you getting that information from? So as they sit there and talk for a moment, something appears to have gone on board as Alex then starts kind of moving through with the rest of his team. They say something is on level 4. As Alex heroically sits in the back, he sends Rude Boy up the ladder as one guy gets grabbed and thrown. The strength exhibited is clearly due to likely the suit possessing some cybernetic enhancements that kind of operates as a powered exoskeletons of sorts, but it's also highly likely that given the size of the region's soldier, that they're just strong regardless. So while that crap is happening, a door then starts getting broken through as one of the heavies moves downstairs. So Broham squares up on it, but then it just sort of like walks by and looks around at the vital components of the ship, which that's all it's there to do is just disable the ship. It has no intention of like taking anybody out, but then he goes to tackle him. But again, the dude is wearing power armor, so not really a fair fight. Alex opens up on it, but it does absolutely nothing. So how do you stop that thing? So S&M finally opens up on it next, and again, does nothing. So she gets smacked, and that's basically like being hit by a mobile wall. Kiss It Better then runs off, leaving Alex and the Heavy. For some reason, I guess it's offended at him, as now he's like kind of just going after Alex, luring it up on deck. Oh, nah, what's my name? Then takes sights on it as she's able to blow the thing's head off. Well, really more than that, basically its entire upper body. Meanwhile, Sam and Mick are still on their walk as we see some CGI horses as they find the cops' jeeps have accidentally gone 109 miles, and this is just what happens to them at this point. They just kind of blow up and fall apart. Mick finally agrees that they need to get off this mountain. The cops still have their keys on their belt, and I'm also questioning why these cops got totally ganked, but the aliens are refusing to do that to anyone else. It makes very little sense. Also, the lights are rolling back up the road as the silver armor appears to be more of the soldiers. So as Sam whimpers behind the Jeep, literally is in the subtitles, the nerd one appears to know that she's back there, but it stops to look at a CGI horse. Sam then makes a break for it as they set the keys to ACC to call out on the radio. Cal then shows up, calling Mick a cyborg. Brother, ooh, like, what? Anyways, the aliens then took out the other guy that was with Cal originally, off camera. I mean, maybe showing that would have been important, but also, what's their criteria for ending some people but not others? I still haven't figured that one out. So over at the Pentagon, the Chinese think that the thing that crashed into them was a communication ship. The aliens wanted a line of communication home. So now they want to use humanity's deep space contact program as Mick starts calling out what they are doing, which is basically taking over the area. Back on the ship, Jimbo runs over to Alex telling him that, oh, my pet lizard, Penelope III, she's just like the aliens. She can't handle the sunlight and they can't handle the sunlight. And this runs me back to the earlier point concerning the evolutionary pathway, which helps to explain their planet actually. First things first, the Region species appear to be an oxygen-based organism because that's how their metabolism runs. They are technically speaking able to breathe our air, but our oxygen saturation is lower, but it's highly likely that they could adapt. If they have blood similar demands, then this would simply be forming more of their oxygen-carrying cells necessary for them to breathe. They would likely feel like they are constantly on a mountain given the levels, but hey, it's better than dying, right? So they appear to be somewhat like amphibians based on the eyes. But that may be a midpoint between amphibians and birds given that the quills have also grown on their face. And there's no reason to think that this couldn't have happened on Earth if the asteroid that struck the Yucatan Peninsula hadn't obliterated life at that time, or at least helped obliterate it. There were a lot of things going on in that time frame, and life was barely holding on for the dinosaurs. Anyhow, this species, the eyes are a complete dead giveaway if we compared it to life on this planet and the evolutionary history that happened here. As a result of them having amphibian characteristics and them being also in their Goldilocks zones, it's likely that this is going to be mostly a water world, but because reptiles may not have formed, likely there is less land than on Earth, and they were clustered on islands near water. And given their craft's ability to go from space to water as a built-in function, but them still breathing air, existing in the water is quite possibly how their society is structured, some of it on land and then some of it on their oceans. Interestingly though, their aversion to bright light, but existing in the Goldilocks zone of their solar system, means that the sun is bright enough to keep water liquid, but this species seems to have an aversion to it, which puts it further into the amphibian category. On Earth, amphibians are sensitive to bright light, which makes further sense as they could dry out if exposed for too long, which is a death sentence. It's sort of like why humans sleep at night. We aren't nocturnal hunters, so why not go to sleep? This has largely made them nocturnal, at least the amphibians, which appears to also be the standard for the Region species as well. While their pupils can contract in bright light, this still allows in too much light, making it extremely difficult for them to see, which is almost disorientating, as we will see later. So Obama gives a speech about the aliens, and I really wondered, did they hire him for this movie? Or did they just like chop up his speeches? I'm never really sure. I feel like Obama was in a lot of movies. So because of this news of aliens touching down, humans do what humans do at the end of the world, which is just loot, burn, and have a giant party. Over at the beacon, Cal says that they have about 5 hours until the aliens use a satellite to phone home. Back on the ship, because we are jumping around like you wouldn't believe, Nagata says that they can't see them, but the aliens can't see their ship. Not exactly sure how he came to that conclusion. They definitely saw you earlier, and now it's nighttime. They could definitely see you now. Using the tsunami buoys, though, they can look for water displacement. Turning off their systems, they tap into the NOAA data and then find the locations. Using the buoys, it's a lot like Battleship. Amazing. God, it's just expert writing how they just somehow worked it in, you know what I'm saying? So now they can track it without radar. Alex and Nagata then settle their differences because they really need to work together on this one, and sort of like humanity needs 40% of an ass whooping by any other species to unite us into not being stupid. We don't need to lose the rock, but it's well known we need to unite against a tangible threat in order to actually come together. So over at the beacon, they realize the disruptor is working only in pulses, not a wall. So they need to get in and go get equipment to make a call. Watching the NOAA data, they then find one is reporting a buoy is underwater as they're able to find it moving. Looking out, they then call out the coordinates E11, you sunk my alien battleship, and then letting out a shot, it's a complete miss, but it did alert the aliens that you are out there as it begins heading towards them. Cal then starts peeing his pants with Mick and Sam, as Mick tells him, you need to go down there and get the equipment. Crawling to the building, you would think someone would be there holding it down. As Calvin grabs it though, he's instantly caught by one of the alien nerds. He grabs the case but then lets go because Cal literally crapped his pants and the alien didn't want him in there. Again, this says to me that this species isn't really all that aggressive to man. While Alex got images of their war blasted into his head, it's referenced that they were attacked by another species. As a result, I see it more as a potential that they are definitely refugee status, and they might be trying to not start a war with humanity because they don't want to have to send an apology. You know, the whole, dear humanity, we regret being alien bastards. We regret coming to Earth. And we most certainly regret the Corps just blew up our raggedy ass fleet, because that would be embarrassing to them. So they may be coming to Earth as either a way to unite against what just wrecked them, or they think humanity was really not as sprawling as it is, so they chose, this small chain of islands to touch down on to potentially hide. Well, whoops, humans are here. But then again, it doesn't really matter because this is our sandbox and we didn't invite you over to play. So sending a shot to Whiskey Tango Foxtrot 69, they miss again as another ship starts making its way towards them. Oh yeah, they communicate. I forgot about that. So as they do, the aliens then start letting out a volley as they put it in reverse, Terry, with the shots missing. Firing off another shot at Alpha Sierra Sierra 420, they send out the 2 coordinates as these actually hit both ships, blowing them up. As they do though, the radio comes back online as the shield appears to have come down somewhat because the disruptor is no longer as strong with 2 ships kind of blown up. Sam then tells them that they need to destroy the facility as a 3rd ship starts coming in, and then they lose signal again. So lock and loading Brides of Christ, they go after this one as well, except it changes course around them, intentionally diverting to different coordinates. Making a break for land, the plan is to take it closer to the ground into shallow waters, where it seems they wait around a piece of land as Alex starts talking about summer camp. Finding the ship flying in, it then squares up on them as the sun starts coming out as they fire a few shots into the actual windshield of their ship, breaking the windows, blinding the aliens momentarily as they unleash a volley on it. I doubt the 50 cal is really doing much, but at least the missiles hit their target, blowing it up. But as they did, the meatballs of doom begin their approach. Firing on that thing, it does very little as their ship starts getting totally shredded. Jimbo starts getting chased, at which point, just run, don't look back. Luckily though, he's saved by shut up and drive, as then they go to run. The captain's area, which the name totally eludes me, captain's nest, the room that you drive from. Anyways, it's donezo, and they start to sink. Good thing they were close to land. Nagata and Alex both nope out of there as they start pulling everyone up, with the metal meatballs continuing to wreck everything as the boat finally sinks. Sam then looks out as Mick says there's a lot of lifeboats in the water, don't worry about it. Mick has a pretty good idea, but Cal elects to kind of stay behind on Alien Mountain by himself, which Mick's idea is to disrupt communication and at least buy Earth another day. The aliens continue doing a bunch of alien stuff as the satellite starts moving overhead. The boats now arrive to pick up everyone as, they just got stomped, I suppose is the best way to put it. They only have 1 ship left, the really old battleship. It's a museum, but maybe still technically works. Luckily, you got a bunch of old guys coming out of retirement, and if you're lucky, that'll be you someday. We don't stay young forever. So, clearing out the museum, they then kick the tires and light some fires to some classic AC/DC. That's some pretty good stuff. Starting up the engines, it'd be hilarious the engines just blow out. Surely, they didn't keep these things oiled down. Yes, I am required to say it like that. It's crazy they actually stole the battleship for this movie. Heading out to get the turrets armed up and then head over to the coast to fire on the island. As they do, however, they realize the force field generator has moved, and with it, the central pylon turns on its side, revealing another massive ship. Aiming the turrets in the wrong direction, the aliens watched a little confused, and then turning hard left, the aliens keep watching as they cannot keep up with the turn for some reason, which is weird because they seemed super agile before. But eventually their own turrets then spin up as then they drop anchor as it snags, pulling the ship around, causing the rounds to sort of miss the ship that the aliens fired. So mission status absolutely sick. So they light it up, introducing the aliens to our own Ooga Dooga sticks, and then releasing the anchor, it starts firing back as some of the turrets get taken out. Continuing their barrage, they unleash everything on the aliens as the ship starts blowing up as in the force field drops. As it comes down, the satellite overhead continues lighting up. So Mick and Sam now jump a Jeep and then blow out the entire steering rack, all 4 tires, and the upper and lower ball joints, but it's only at 106 miles, so they're able to keep it going due to just the sheer momentum it has, as then they stop the signal from going out. But now Sam's leg is stuck as Mick gets out of the Jeep to square up on Heavy. Back at the ship, they get several guys to carry the 1,000-pound round, the 500 feet to turret 2, because turret 3, I believe, was just blown up. So while that's going on, Mick squares up on the Heavy, taking off his helmet, blinding him to the joys of hand-to-hand combat with Homo sapiens. Hell yeah, baby. Kick his ass, Seabass. But of course, the power armor, cheater uses his power armor to cheat, but he's almost blinded. Again, humans fighting aliens hand-to-hand and actually holding their own, if you don't think that's not cool, you're lame. So as it looks like it's going to be kind of going bad for Mick, Cal then shows up to smack him in the head with a briefcase, and luckily their brains appear to be stored in their head, so it disorients him. Back on the boat, Dancing in the Dark goes to man, or I guess woman, the turret, while the rest of the aliens are freaking out trying to fix their uplink while Mick chokes out the brute. This definitely means these things have a circulatory system as well as potentially lungs in the works, as blood goes up to their brain in their head. Getting the uplink back up, the turret then takes aim on the location. So while that's happening, a piece of the destroyed alien ship comes out of the water and starts sending the metal meatballs to the battleship. The uplink now starts again as Disturbia fires the shot as the meatballs get fired too. The 1,000-pounder then hits, blowing up the uplink, preventing them from phoning home as the meatballs get shreked by some jets that fly through. It's so much patriotism. So all's well that ends well, as they hold an event for everyone involved. Mick gets another medal, what a Chad, as medals are being handed out to all the major players. Alex is then awarded the Silver Star, however, you are still kicked out of the Navy. That'd be hilarious. Everyone is pretty jazzed about the events as everyone then high fives. Of course, I still feel like the aliens have our coordinates, and surely they wouldn't come back, right? Alex and Nagata are now bros, as one does, and then he makes out with Blondie as he heads over to talk to her dad. I mean, you did just get the Silver Star. Surely he won't say no. So, with a lot of confidence, he kind of walks up. He's like, hey, can I marry your daughter? And he's like, no. All right. Well, instead, he goes to eat with them to discuss his terms of surrender, as it usually goes, and then they go and get a chicken burrito. And thus concludes Battleship. All right, so we are pretty pro-human around here, and honestly, this species, had it maintained contact, staying just outside of our atmosphere, likely they could have communicated with humanity, and it's not a complete disregard for the dominant species of this planet anyways, which indicates that something else is taking place. It was not trying to make its presence completely unknown, and even left alive what it would assume to have been the native military. Either it was arrogance and not worrying about humanity, or humanity completely misinterpreted the region's intentions. But then again, how are we to know what they were trying to do? This species appears to be amphibians of sorts. They have a similar biomechanical structure to humanity with likely an internal skeletal system along with the circulatory and nervous system just like we have. Even looking somewhat human, meaning someone somewhere would 100% try to hook up with one of these things if Mass Effect is anything to go off of, which, I mean, come on, Tally best girl. But of course, I still have to say it was not humanity that botched this, but them. So as a result, get wrecked aliens, this is our planet, and it was man who was made in God's image, not you creature. But I legitimately want to hear what you guys think. What do you think these aliens' intentions were? Clearly, they had a war break out on their own world, but it's unknown if it was they themselves fighting one another, which is what humans do, or another species that did it. Maybe they didn't want to fight to kind of continue preserving their numbers. Not really sure. But anyhow, I want to thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed, then leaving a like is greatly appreciated. And subscribing is a great way to stay up to date on when I post. I'll drop my Twitter, Discord, Patreon, and Roanoke Tales channel link. Speaking of patrons, I'd like to thank mine real quick. First, I'd like to thank our 3 astrophysicists, Death's Dancer, Feather, and SR1 Blaze. or Thrawn Blaze. It's one of those two. Thank you very much for your support. Next, I'd like to thank our scientists, Argent Sentinel, Dakota23, Lucian Dragon, Metric System, and Trash Panda in Trenchcoat. Thank you guys as well. And the rest of my patrons, you are greatly appreciated and absolute ballers. But alright, that's going to do it for me. I hope everyone enjoyed, and I'll see y'all in the next one.